I'm gonna be honest, I have no excuse for this other than I wanted my video to be Christmassy and I like the decorations in here, so they're all Christmassy. My dad did this. It's his little season table, which he does every year, which is pretty cool, I think. Merry Christmas, I'm back. I'm going to explain at the end of this video where I've been. And the reasons for why my second sorcerer video isn't up and why I've disappeared off YouTube again for a few months. I know I keep doing that and I'm going to talk a bit about that at the end of the video and sort of what's been going on. The reason I'm going to talk about at the end is not some secret plan to try and get you to watch the whole video. It wouldn't be a very good one if it was. But because I know people get annoyed when they've clicked on a video and they want the video to talk about the thing that the video says it will talk about and not for the person to just talk about things in their life or the channel for ages. So I'm going to do that at the end for people who actually care. Otherwise you can just watch these, I don't know what the title of the video is going to be yet. You can just watch me categorising books. I would say book awards, but it's more just me, I haven't read enough books for there to be any real contenders for the different awards that I'm giving. It's basically just me wanting to describe some books that I read this year, so coming up with an award so that I can describe a book that I read this year. So as I said, but me explaining about what's going on my channel, maybe just having a bit of a chat as well. I don't quite know what I'm going to be talking about yet. That'll be at the end of the video. And I'm going to get into this because I'm hoping that I won't have to do any editing because I want to get this video up today, this evening. It's already evening, pretty much dark outside, so I want to get this done before. I wanted to have minimal editing so I can get this up, because otherwise it's never going to happen, because we all know how good I am at getting things done on time, so yeah. Oh, if you can hear crackling and stuff, because of the fire. I've got a real fire that I lit just for you guys. I thought I'd make it nice and Christmassy. And this room's really nicely decorated as well, which I might just show you some of it later, for no other reason than I think it's pretty. So there's that. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to begin. So, I've got some runners-up for some of these awards. The award for the most boring book of the year, well, the runner-up for the most boring book of this year. Oh, again, these aren't books that came out this year. Some of them are, but most of them are just books that I read this year. So, the most boring book that I read this year, runner-up, goes to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which I know is a popular book, so I'm sorry. But I didn't finish it, and I rarely don't finish books. But this one, I couldn't finish because I was bored. Which is a shame, because the concept sounds really cool. And the cover's really nice. It's got a very nice looking chap on the cover. It's a very cool title as well. And I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. So it's about, let me remember, yeah, it's about Henry Montague, who is a gentleman, and he's just finished, I think he's just finished boarding school, and it's not set nowadays, by the way. It's when they used to do, grand tours of Europe, and he's about to go on a grand tour of Europe and get into all kinds of shenanigans, which sounds interesting, doesn't it? But I was bored. Anyway, yeah, moving on, because hopefully this will be a short video. That was the runner-up for most boring book of the year, sorry. The winner, though, from the most boring book of the year goes to Dune. And I'm sorry, I know this one is a classic. Classic, one of the best sci-fi books, apparently, ever written. I really wanted to love it, I tried to love it. It's not like these kind of books I don't like, I like meaty, really in-depth world, detailed stories. I love The Lord of the Rings. I love stuff like that, but with this one, it was so dull. I don't know, it was so boring, and again, I didn't finish it. Not only did I not finish it, I didn't get very far. How far did I get? I don't know, I don't even know anymore. Probably literally got that far into it. It was so boring. And I couldn't face finishing it. This year's been really bad for me, actually, in not finishing books. Normally I finish every single book, but this year, there were quite a lot that were just dull. So yeah, most boring book that I read this year. The next category, award, is the best audiobook. The best audiobook that I listened to this year was The Diviners by Libba Bray. So, as a book, as a story, it was good. It wasn't amazing, but bearing in mind it wasn't amazing. There were some issues I had with it, mainly the villain. I thought that could have been done a lot more scarily, and I didn't like that whole aspect of it. But as an audiobook, it wasn't terrible, by the way, the story, like, I enjoyed it. It was enjoyable, and I read the second one, I can't remember what it's called, and yeah, like, it's enjoyable. Not amazing though, not as good as people say. However, the audiobook was absolutely fantastic. One of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. Definitely the best one I've listened to this year. I've only really been listening to audiobooks this year, so yeah, the best audiobook I've listened to. And because the narrator was so good, she like really, she managed to do so many different voices for every single character. Even like the voices for the men, she did so convincingly. It was really like brought everything to life, and like the different accents she did for everyone. It was fantastic, really well written, really well read, really enjoyable read. I definitely recommend the Diviner's audiobook. Again, it's about, it's set during the Prohibition in America. I think most of it takes place in New York, and it's about sort of all these creepy things going on. It's all to do with the occult and this group of people who, yeah, it's kind of like ghosts and spooky things and all that kind of thing. I mean, the story was good, the characters were very good, and the narrator was even better. Would recommend. So the award for character who saved the book, and without whom it probably would have sucked, or at least have been meh, goes to Kaz Brekker from Six of Crows. I know, it's a much loved book. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't amazing. Everyone says it's like the best book ever. It wasn't. It was good. I would say it was okay to good, is what I would say it was. But the only reason, and I enjoyed it, I enjoyed reading it. The only reason though that I enjoyed reading it was because of Kaz Brekker. If he hadn't been in that, so this character, if he had not been in that book, it would have been boring at best and terrible at worst. So the story, if you don't know Six of Crows, is about, it's set in a fantasy world, and it's about this group of people, 6 of them, who are going to pull off like an impossible heist, basically. It's like so it's like that kind of book. And Kaz Brekker's like the head of it, you know, and he sort of, I mean, I guess they're all kind of main characters, but I'd say he's definitely the main one. He drives the plot, definitely. And what was really enjoyable about this book was getting to his plans, when they all like paid off. It was really like, I really loved that when you're reading the book and you know that he's got some epic plan, you're trying to look for the threads and how it's going to pull together, and at the end he sort of reveals this plan of like everything he planned out before, and you can see all the steps come together, and it's so satisfying. So from that point of view, it's really good. But again, he makes it. But the world itself was, it wasn't that, the world building wasn't that great, I didn't think. The other characters were okay, but you know, but it was only interesting because of him, because he's an interesting character. First of all, he's a villain, definitely. I mean, he's a good guy. He's the good guy and a bad guy. He's not a great guy, but he's charismatic, so I'll give him that. And he's ruthless, and he also is very interesting. He makes very interesting plans, which make for a great story. Yeah, but without him, no. He redeemed that book, because otherwise there were parts that it was just, overall it was okay, but he was the only thing that made it worth reading, to be honest. So the award for the book that pleasantly surprised me goes to, and it's not a book, but Saga, a graphic novel. And the reason why this pleasantly surprised me was because until I read Saga, I hadn't read any graphic novels. Oh no, actually that's a lie. I had, but I hadn't enjoyed graphic novels that much, and I thought that I thought graphic novels or like comics weren't for me, because I was kind of like, they're kind of lame, like comic books. I mean, I'll admit it, like the idea of comic books initially to me seemed like, I don't know, I thought they'd only appeal to like young boys, to be honest. And everyone was like raving about Saga, and I was like, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I love it. It's so good. I've read, you know, I've got several volumes now, and I've read several volumes, and it's really interesting. And I was pleasantly surprised, because I found out that graphic novels are for me if they are good graphic novels, and this is a very good graphic novel and super interesting. Yeah, it's about, I'll give a brief thing. It's set in this like crazy sci-fi world. There's this war between the two races, the inhabitants of two different planets, and these two are on opposite sides of this war. So he's, and I can't remember, it's been so long since I've read it, but he's on one side of the battle, she's on the other, and they have a baby, and that's how the story starts. And then it's like this epic sort of, it's funny though as well, it's like this epic story where all this crazy stuff happens, it's mental. So many different characters, so many different planets they go to amidst this whole like galactic war, but it's really funny as well, and the characters are really likeable, and I found that interesting because I didn't think I'd be able to like connect to a character in a graphic novel, but yeah, it's super good. Anyway, I need to move on because I'm trying to make this video short and up to date. So, the award for the laziest high fantasy goes to Poison Study, which I've heard a lot of good things about, and I was so disappointed when I read it. It was just so lackluster and dull, and not much was, like, I don't know, And I thought it was lazy as well, because high fantasies, by their very nature, are supposed to be really intricate, so much, like, detail and effort needs to go into the... That's the thing, I mean, if you're going to write high fantasy, so much detail and effort needs to go into the world to make it believable. It's a really difficult thing to do. But if you haven't done that properly, then the book really suffers if it's a high fantasy, and it did. And I thought, so it came across as a little bit lazy, like the world hadn't been properly developed, and I was disappointed because I've heard nothing but good things about the book, and I just really thought it was not even like mediocre. I thought it was bad and boring. Yeah, so there's that. Along the same vein, well actually no, this one's slightly better. So the award for most meh book of the year goes to The Search for Wandler by Tony Ditalizzi. I can't never pronounce his name. The Search for Wandler basically is his book that he wrote, and he illustrated it. I didn't finish it. Again, it was boring, like several other books I read this year. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't a terrible book. I don't think, from what I can remember, and I can't really remember a lot because it wasn't very interesting, it wasn't badly written. It's a children's book, but it was just like, I just didn't care. I didn't care about any of it. I didn't care about the characters, I didn't care about the world, I didn't care about the story. It wasn't terrible, I just didn't care. It was just meh. Which is a shame because I really like him. Tony Ditalizzi. Ditalizzi. There's no T. Ditalizzi. I don't know how to pronounce it. But I really like him as an illustrator. I think his illustrations are fantastic. Not so much in this book, actually. But in general, I think he's a brilliant illustrator. I love his illustrations. So it's a shame that I didn't like this. But I didn't like it. The award for the worst husband of the year from a book goes to Guy from Rosemary's Baby. This isn't a bad award, this is a good award, because it was a fantastic book and I loved it and I enjoyed it, and it's a good thing that he was the worst husband because he's supposed to be a villain, so that was good. But yeah, he wins it, yay, well done. He was appalling. So this story follows Rosemary. It's set in the 60s, I think. I'm pretty sure it was written in the 60s, so yeah, it will be set then as well. It's not going to be set nowadays. 1966. Okay, yeah, so it's like set around then. So it follows Rosemary, who... her and her husband, Guy, and they move into a new apartment building. He's an actor. And then they meet this sort of elderly couple. The building itself has got a really dodgy reputation. Like, loads of weird things happen in this building. It's a really sinister reputation. And their next door neighbours are this elderly couple who, like, are really nice and really friendly and really, like, so nice to Rosemary and Guy. And soon after that, Guy then gets a role, like, he's a struggling actor, and then he suddenly gets a really good role in Broadway. After they become friends with this couple. And soon after that, Rosemary gets pregnant. And then the couple start getting weirdly obsessed with her baby. With when she's pregnant, they're weirdly, like, controlling and weirdly, like, obsessed. Yeah, they're still really nice, but she thinks there's something maybe going a bit weirdly wrong. Yeah. And then who can she trust? Can she trust her husband? Yeah, and it's fantastic. That's not really a spoiler because you find out pretty early into the book that her husband is a bit of a scumbag. That's putting it mildly. But yeah, it's a fantastic book and it's really gripping as well. It's quite short, so interesting, really is scary and sort of creepy, but fantastic. And I think the reason Guy wins Worst Husband of the Year, bearing in mind I've even read a book this year also with a really abusive husband who is like violent. He isn't Guy, but he's worse, and I think the reason he's worse is because he's so like, it's like, I don't know, it's almost so like cold about it. I think the reason with the other book I read where the husband was violent, I mean, yeah, that's obviously he's a horrible person, that's totally bad, but that was like a reaction of anger, whereas with him, he's so cold. I don't know, and he's like, he doesn't even like seem to realise that he's a terrible person, which kind of makes it worse of what he's doing to her, and it's just fantastic book though, read it, it was brilliant. So the award for the most vapid, shallow and empty book goes to, and it goes to two of them, The Bells and Glitter. And I don't know who either of them are by because I don't care. And the reason I've said two of them, why they both win, is because they're so similar, I can't even remember what happened in which book or what happened where. Like, they're both in this weird scenario where it's like sort of modern day, but then they're sort of in a court as well. And it's just really, they're both just bizarre, and I can't even remember which characters are in which because they were both so boring and dull. I wouldn't have finished them if I hadn't been listening to them on audiobook. And I can't even remember really what happened, but I remember that they were just vacuous and so shallow and empty. I think Glitter was worse. I think Glitter was the worst, and it was terrible. Yeah. The award for the worst ending that completely ruined, destroyed, and made me hate what was up until that point an okay book goes to Behind Her Eyes. So this was a thriller. It's about a woman who becomes obsessed with this really good-looking couple, and she becomes friends with them, and then she thinks that it's all just a bit weird, and she doesn't know like which one of them to trust, because it's like they're both sort of against each other, and she's friends with both of them, and then it's like which one of them is telling the truth. And it's an interesting concept. It was mildly, it wasn't fantastic, but it was mildly interesting throughout the book. It was okay, it was fine, I was enjoying it. It's a thriller up until the ending, and the ending was so bad I threw the book across the room. It's weird, but it really affected me, the ending, actually. I hated it so much. It made me so mad, mainly because, I'm going to give a spoiler here, mainly because the villain won, and not only did the villain win, but no one knew that the villain won, and no one knew that the protagonist, spoiler again, died. It was like, it felt, and I don't mind books with like a chilling ending, like a twist, like, oh my god, that's horrific, that's so bad, you know, I'm not saying that, it doesn't have to be a happy ending, but it was the way that it was done was such a cheat. It felt like, first of all, it was out of the blue and out of nowhere, and I was like, wait, what the bloody hell's happened now? My camera cut off, and I can't remember what I was saying about Behind Her Eyes being the worst ending ever, but you don't need to know anything more other than it was terrible. You can read it if you want, but I would advise you not to, because just don't. It was so bad. The award for, this is a good one, the award for the most original book that I read this year, well, no, the award for the runner-up for the most original book I read this year goes to The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is like a murder mystery story set in like a stately home, and there's this really lovely fancy party going on. The difference is that the main character keeps waking up in a different body every day, and the day repeats, so it's like every single evening Evelyn Hardcastle dies, the young lady of the house, and he's got to figure out who killed her, but he figures it out by waking up in a different body every single day, and the day repeats, and it's like he puts more clues together by being a different person. So like one day he's one of the servants, and the next day he's like one of the guests, like Lord whatever, and the next day he's like, yeah, it changes, and he's a different character every single day, by which he can like assess what's going on and get a good idea of, yeah, and he's got to figure out who has killed her, and the day keeps repeating until he finds out. And I thought it was quite original, quite a cool concept, a good twist on the murder mystery story, so not just, you know, a whodunit, but also you get to wake up in a different body every day, which is very interesting. And it was gonna win the most original until, how long ago was it? Like a month ago, 2 months ago, I read Night Film by Marisha Pessl, and that is the winner. The most original book I read this year is Night Film. It's fantastic. I don't have it with me, and I don't have it with me because my uncle is now reading it. My mum borrowed it, and now my uncle's reading it because it's so good that everyone wants to read it. It's fantastic. It's a thriller. It follows this reporter who is interested in the case. So there's this horror film director, Cordova, and his daughter dies, and this reporter's trying to find out sort of what went on, and he suspects that Cordova's not all he seems, because like his horror movies are so frightening and so messed up that like you're like sort of changed after you watch them, and that you can't really, I mean, at a certain point where you can't really watch Cordova's films in the cinema anymore. It's like you have to go to underground screenings of them, like secret screenings, because they're so weird and messed up, and like, or you find them in the darkest depths of the internet, and it's, yeah, but it's sort of following this reporter who thinks there's something more to Cordova, something really sinister about Cordova, apart from just his horror movies, and he suspects that, you know, and it's sort of like throughout the book, you don't really know, is there something supernatural going on? Are Cordova's movies more true than they seem? It's sort of all centering around that, and like, his films are almost hypnotic, and it's all just, yeah. But as a thriller, it's so good, so gripping, and it's so good because it's like a slow burn as well. It's like a slow build, and you're gradually piecing things together. A lot of thriller writers make the mistake of like just charging in. It doesn't do that, it builds it up. However, it's still like interesting from like page one, from like, you know, putting things together. And also, which is fantastic, I couldn't see where it was going. Like, I'm reading the book going, I just don't know how this is going to end. I don't know what's happening, like, which is fantastic. Because normally with a thriller, you can sort of tell, or like, oh, I bet this is going to happen. Or with that, it's like, I had no idea. It was such a good book. Read it. It was fantastic. So, the award for the book, for wish fulfillment, for the book that was the most wish fulfillment, the book, how do I phrase that? The book that I read this year that was most wish fulfillment, that's not a sentence. The award for the most you know what I mean. The award for the most wish fulfillment book that I read this year goes to, I've forgotten. Oh, I've got it written down. Okay, goes to The Hating Game. I know that was a huge book this year that blew up. It's, you know, like a chick lit, romantic book, light-hearted, fluffy, about a woman who works in an office, and her like co-worker who she like works opposite. They hate each other, and you can see where this is going. So they hate each other, but then do they? Yeah, it's that book. I mean, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, by the way, that it was just like pure wish fulfillment. But it was. I mean, it was kind of enjoyable. Like, it wasn't terrible by any means, and for what it was, you know, it was kind of an enjoyable book. But it was definitely wish fulfillment, let's be honest. So yeah, there we go. Make of that what you will. It's, you know, I don't know if that's either a bad or a good award. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. The award for the book that should have been a short story but wasn't goes to Every Heart a Doorway. I think it was short anyway. I think it was a novella. But it should have been shorter. It should have been a short story. Concept is that there's this home for, I think it's the Home for Wayward Children, is that what it's called? Where it's like a children's home for children who have been to magical worlds, and they've come back to the normal world. So for example, like something like, I guess, kids who had been to somewhere like Narnia or Alice in Wonderland, you know, stuff like that. When they come back to the normal world, it's like they can't really function, and no one believes them, so they get sent to this children's home, where all these other children have come from different fantasy worlds. And I thought, what a cool idea. And it is a cool idea. It was badly executed though. Badly executed because she tried to put a plot in there, so because it was like a novella, the interesting thing about the story wasn't the plot. I don't think anyone picked up that book, because it was like a murder mystery as well. I don't think anyone picked up that book because they wanted to read about a murder mystery. I, for one, picked up that book for what it was advertised as, because it was a really interesting story about children who've been to other worlds, and just a cool concept of like them in the ordinary world in this children's home. And I think it would, as a short story, it would have been really like bittersweet, you know, because for some of the story of the novella, you got descriptions of the different fantasy worlds these children had been to, and what kind of personalities these children were, and why they were drawn to these worlds, and how they all longed to go back and they couldn't. And I think, you know, that's what I was really interested in. I loved reading about that, the different worlds these children had gone to. Like, some of them had gone to, like, Narnia-like worlds. Some of them had gone to really brutal and violent worlds. Some of them had gone to fairylands. Some of them had gone to... Well, the main character had gone to a land of the dead, which was described in such a beautiful way, like, sort of really quiet and peaceful and still, with, like, pomegranate trees and just, like, night time, and just, it sounded really lovely. I'd have loved to have read a short story where you follow the main character, who, as I said, had been to the land of the dead, turn up at this children's home, as she did in the novella, meet all these different characters. You hear something about, you know, their worlds and a bit of an explanation about it. And at the end, like happened in the novella, she has this realisation which enables her to find a door again, a doorway into the world that she left, which is like a big thing because in this like world, it's once you've come back to the normal world, it's almost impossible to find your way like home again to the fantasy world. And I think as a short story, it would have been like really bittersweet and really lovely that, you know, if you get descriptions of these other fantasy worlds and it's sort of really cool, and by the end she finds her way back home. Whereas what actually happened was it had all that, but then in the middle there's this weird like murder mystery plot where all the children are dying, but it like tries to weave in all these different worlds as if there's like a story, and it's like they don't really hold together because they're such vastly different fantasy worlds. So much of the story became irrelevant to the like murder mystery plot, and it was just bizarre and weird, and it kind of ruined it for me. So yeah, that wins the award for should have been a short story. So the award for kind of enjoyable, but I'm ashamed to admit it, goes to the Morganville vampire books. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I think I didn't read all of them. I read the first few. I had read them when I was in my mid-teens, and I kind of enjoyed them then. And I was like, I thought I'd reread them again this year. And yeah, I know. Teenage vampire books. Is there anything more cliche? I'm sure they're terrible. Hear me out on this. So the reason that I liked these books is because, yeah, okay, they're teen fantasy books, but what's really refreshing about them is that the main character, so it's set when she's at university, first of all, so she's a bit older. Oh no, actually no, that's not true. She's not older because she's really clever, so she's actually a school age. I think she's like 15 or 16. She's prematurely at university, like living by herself in this town. What's refreshing about these books, though, is that, thank the Lord, she doesn't fall in love with a vampire. I think that's a spoiler, maybe. Oops, whatever. No, it's not. She doesn't fall in love with a vampire. First of all, the whole books don't revolve around the romance, which again is refreshing for a teen vampire book. It's like this whole town called Morganville where vampires control it, and they are, as you would expect vampires to be, sadistic, evil, awful creatures that treat human beings like cattle who they can feed on and control and do whatever they want with. And they control this whole town, they run this whole town. And she, like, you don't, like, at the beginning she doesn't realise they're there, and then she sort of starts to work out, it's all kind of weird what's going on. What's really refreshing is that the romance, first of all, isn't the driving force, and second of all, it's with a human. She falls in love with a human, which is so nice to read about, that for once is not some broody, evil vampire, but it's just a normal guy. And you know what? Why I kind of enjoyed these books is because the characters actually weren't bad. Normally in these books you get really flat characters that are just like walking stereotypes, like, oh, I'm broody, handsome vampire guy. And then there's, you know, the protagonist who's like, I'm pretty, boring girl. And then you have, yeah, you know what I mean. But in this book, the characters felt quite well-rounded, especially the love interest. And for the first time, pretty much, in reading a teen vampire book, I understood why she liked him, because he was a nice guy, and he wasn't perfect. He was like, in some ways he was a bit of a slob, like he was supposed to get a job and didn't. He just sort of sat around on the sofa for a lot of the time, but he was a really nice guy, and just like felt like a real person. Like I felt like you'd know someone like him, like a young lad, you know. He was just like, you know, perhaps nothing amazingly special about him, just like any young lad, but he was just seemed like a really nice person, and believable as well. Like I got a sense of his personality and character, and that was really nice to read about. And it's actually not terrible books, even though they don't sound great. So yeah, that's the award for books that I kind of enjoyed but I'm ashamed to admit. So here we are, on to the home stretch now. Is that how you say it? I don't know. Is that a baseball term? I don't understand. I shouldn't use sports analogies or to describe things because I don't understand sports. So on to the final hurdle. That's still sport, but that makes more sense. No, we're not the final. The home run, the home stretch. I don't know what I'm talking about. Please ignore me. Okay, to the award for the most disappointing book that I read this year is A Discovery of Witches. They've recently made a TV show of this. But the book, A Discovery of Witches, it is so disappointing. So I expected, the way it's described is like, and what I heard about it is that it's about this, follows the main character, it's these books for adults, she's an adult, it's set in Oxford, she is an academic, the main character, she's an academic and she's researching alchemy and all these old manuscripts, and she's a witch, and yeah, it's like following this like lost manuscript and it's supposed to be all like scientific and whatever. So I was expecting when I heard this, oh, science and magic mixed together, oh, set in Oxford, oh, I was expecting something like His Dark Materials. No, I was expecting Philip Pullman. What I got was Twilight for adults. That is literally what this book is. She falls in love with a vampire. It's, first of all, it's so boring. Nothing happens, like, this whole book. I didn't finish it, again, sorry, I didn't finish it. Another book that was boring, because it was so boring. But she's a witch, she's an adult, she falls in love with a vampire after, like, they meet twice, and he's boring. And after, like, a week of knowing each other, they're all angsty and being all teenagery, like, I can't live without you. And it's sort of all like, yeah, it's like a book pretending to be really intelligent, but it's not. It's just all about the romance. And the vampire's really like, again, he's like Edward from Twilight. He's really controlling and creepy. And then she finds out, because vampires have a different marriage ceremony, I think they like hook up. And then he's like, oh, we're married now, because that's what a vampire marriage ceremony is. And she's like, what? But she's fine with that. And and also, it's like this whole thing with vampires, that because he's the male vampire and there's this really animalistic thing going on, that the females have to obey him, which, yeah, it's as weird as it sounds. So it's like that, and it's just kind of, I was just expecting so much more from this book. I didn't think it was, like, I knew there was a romance in it, but I thought maybe that would, like, be pushed to the back, and then it would mainly be, like, you know, like His Dark Materials, like Philip Pullman, like really intelligent story. Was it? No, not at all. It's literally Twilight for adults, except it's actually worse than Twilight. It was so boring, and just creepy, and she's an idiot, the main character. She's meant to be really intelligent. She's like the youngest person to, I can't even remember what, but she's an academic at Oxford University, and she's like a professor, and she's the youngest woman ever to, I don't know, achieve this or whatever it is she does. Who cares? But she's an idiot because vampires are like their enemies, and then she trusts him after like she meets him once, even though, yeah, and he's like, oh, could it be really dangerous? I think he killed 2 of his previous girlfriends by accident, like hundreds of years ago, because he's a vampire, and then she's cool with that. So yeah, there's that. Most disappointing book of the year. Because I was expecting it to be amazing, and it, oh my god, so wasn't. Okay, so, award for the most inventive book that I've read this year. And I know, yeah, inventive is basically the same category as the most original, which I've already done, but it's my channel, so who cares? I do what I want. The award for most inventive, and it's not a book, it's a graphic novel, goes to Sandman by Neil Gaiman. Sandman graphic novels, I haven't read all of them yet, I've read most of them, and yeah, it's so good. The graphic novel is so inventive, as the award suggests. Yeah, and I enjoyed it so much. I mean, the reason there are all these is because I'm actually talking about them for my dissertation for uni, because they're that good and there's that much stuff in them and they're that intelligent, I think. So there's lots of, yeah, and just so inventive and brilliant, and it's Neil Gaiman, and when is he ever not brilliant? So there's that. And finally, the award for, here we go. The award for the sexiest book of the year, and by sexy I of course mean intelligent, goes to The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. Who else? Yes, it was brilliant. So yeah, it's the prequels to the His Dark Materials trilogy, and it's so good. It's so good because I love his books because they're like, there's magic in them, but also science, unlike A Discovery of Witches. There's magic and science in them, but it's like they're so realistic, you can almost believe the magic, because it's, the world's so well done, the characters are so well developed, the logic behind everything I mean, it's all just brilliant, and it's all sort of, yeah, it just merges together so well that I can believe it, you know? It's so believable. And this book was really enjoyable and really good, and I'm so glad that we get more from this world because it's fantastic. So yeah, read Philip Pullman if you haven't already because they're brilliant. And it's nice to see little baby Lyra back again. So yeah, that's it. That's all the books I wanted to talk about. I hope that video is not as long as I think it's going to be. That was meant to be really short. Talking about some of the books this year. And now, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to explain why this video has taken me so long to upload. Don't worry, the second part of the Sorcerer video, which I filmed, which was meant to be up before Halloween, is still coming. I'm hoping, and I'm not making any promises because honestly, I'm so busy over these next few weeks, but I'm hoping it'll go up on around, not New Year, but like either the 30th of December, maybe the 29th, sometime like that. Sometime after Christmas and between New Year, but it might be after New Year. The reason that it's taken me so long to get that done is because, so I've been working on my dissertation, which the deadline is on the 7th of January, so I still haven't finished it yet. So I'm going to be very busy, but that's partly why I haven't yet put up. I haven't finished editing the Sorceress video yet. It's partly because my dissertation has been taking up so much of my time, but also because, like, I know this keeps happening, so I know my videos are really few and far between on YouTube, and it's because, and I know I said this in one of my other videos, that it's not my priority right now, because I've not been focusing on it, which has been true. I've been focusing on, obviously, university and my dissertation, and also, which I haven't mentioned before on YouTube, I don't think, I'm pretty sure I haven't, and I'm not going to go into detail, because I don't want to talk about personal stuff, really, or put it on the internet, but this past year has been, in terms of my personal life, and like stuff that's been happening personally, has been really horrible, like really difficult, and there's been loads of, I mean, when it rains it pours, doesn't it? I mean, just so much stuff has been happening that's made this past year just so difficult in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of crap been going on, which again I'm not going to go into, but which is what in November was particularly bad as well, which is that was, sort of from the end of October to like beginning of November, which is when I was planning to get up that second Sorceress video, and then it was like life went a bit crazy. I mean, these past few years haven't been the best. Having said that though, I'm not complaining about it. I'm really glad that the stuff that happened has happened, and because overall, like, it's definitely been for the best. But yeah, it has been rocky, and that's the thing I wanted to say and talk about a bit, is that I'm really starting to get into YouTube. Well, I say that, I know I haven't made a video in ages, but I think I've sort of made it, which sounds stupid. It seems like I don't think I fully made a decision until quite recently to like do YouTube, if that makes any sense, even though I've been doing YouTube for over a year now. It's like when I started my YouTube channel, I kind of felt like I had to, which sounds really stupid and weird, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this, but for quite like, I felt like there was stuff I wanted to say and wanted to talk about, but I didn't like the idea of YouTube itself. Like, I didn't like the thought of YouTube, and it scared me as much as I kind of wanted to do it, and I kind of only really wanted to do it because there was stuff I wanted to talk about, and I probably would have at that point preferred to do a blog, but of course I recognise that things are moving away from blogging, writing online, and it'd probably just be easier if I made a YouTube channel, even though I didn't particularly want to do that. And pretty much until very recently, it's like I was aware of that, but at some point over the past few weeks I've kind of made a decision without really being aware that I made a decision, that I definitely do want to commit to YouTube. And that's not me promising that there's now going to be consistent uploads, because I'm still at university, but it is saying that when I finish uni, which is only in a few months, and then I'm finished uni, which, like, for good, which at first terrified me, the thought of going out into the world, but at this point I'm so sick of it. I just cannot wait for it to be over, to be honest. And at that point, hopefully, and I don't know because I don't know where life's going to take me, but I hope that I will then be able to focus more on YouTube, because I would really like to do that. And it's like it's kind of, I don't know, I feel like I've like made a decision to commit to YouTube, which I'd really like to do, and I kind of know now what my style is and what kind of videos I'll be doing, because like when I started I didn't really know what kind of stuff, I knew I'd be talking about books, but I didn't really know my style, what kind of stuff I'd be talking about, and now I've got a really clear idea. I've got so many ideas for videos that I want to do, and just, I'm really excited about it, which I wasn't initially, like, yeah, which I don't know if you can tell from, I can tell when I watch back my earliest videos, that I'm so scared in them. I'm so like, I can see that I'm really defensive. I can see how defensive I am, I think because I was so scared. And now it's like, I don't know, I've kind of gotten over that, gotten past that point of overwhelmed and scared by everything, which I was as well. Like, yeah, I got a lot of negative comments, which did somewhat bother me, obviously, you know, but kind of didn't at the same time. I think I've been quite good at dealing with it. But it was a lot of the time the positive stuff really freaked me out as well. There was a little while after my channel blew up earlier this year where I just felt completely overwhelmed, and like, it was so scary. Even though a lot of the reaction was positive, it's so terrifying. I don't like a positive reaction, it sounds so weird, but I don't know, I find it really overwhelming and terrifying. And I don't think from making my YouTube channel till now I've really properly committed to YouTube, partly because I haven't been able to, partly because of my personal life, and the past year, and well, more than a year, it's been a bit rubbish. It's been kind of, yeah, not been brilliant. So I haven't been able to commit to YouTube, but I know that I want to now. So I'm not, yeah, because I think I have had a few people saying that, worried that I'm going to delete my channel or stop making videos. Where I am now, I'm not going to do that. I'm, if anything, going to be making more videos. Possibly not until I finish uni, because I don't yet have a lot of time on my hands, but I know that I really want to get into this and sort of commit to it, because I'm enjoying it now, which I wouldn't say I wasn't enjoying it, but I was more scared than I was anything else, and at this point it's like, I'm more excited than I am scared. It's like, balanced it out. Yeah, and again, because this is the video, well, it's the Christmas video, it's the video that I'm making at the end of the year, I just want to say thank you to all of you, all of my subscribers, because most of you have subscribed this year. It was like sort of this year when my channel blew up, really. I mean, it's only been going for just over a year, but yeah, so it's been very good in that regard, so thank you very much, all of you who have joined me this year and supported me this year. It's been good, it's been good. Another thing, I deleted Twitter. Well, I didn't delete it, I've still got Twitter. I deleted it on my phone in November, because November was crazy and rubbish. So I deleted Twitter on my phone in November, and I don't think I've checked it that much since then, so I need to check Twitter now probably. I probably should get it on my phone, because I don't have it on my phone, I haven't been really checking it. Yeah, I need to get better at social media. I think that's everything though. I think that's kind of everything I wanted to say. They were all my book awards for this year. Yeah. So hopefully new videos will be up soon. I haven't disappeared, I'm just, well, I don't want to say struggling, but yeah, it's, you know, trying to juggle things at the moment and fit everything in, and I have a deadline in my dissertation very soon. I'm freaking out a little bit about it, but it's gonna be okay. Just, it's gonna be fine, I hope. So yeah, I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and subscribe to PewDiePie. Merry Christmas. Goodbye.